Hello, my name is Patricia Keats, Director of Library and Archives at the Society of California Pioneers. I'd like to share with you today what I think is one of the Society's most remarkable items of Gold Rush history. No, not a gold nugget, nor a miner's pen, nor even a rare map of the gold fields, but a letter written by a young man from the mines at midnight to his sweetheart back in Pennsylvania. The letter is brief, which he apologizes for, but it is heartfelt. He hopes to return east and see her soon. What makes the letter so remarkable is that it is written with gold dust, affixed to a piece of paper with glue or mucilage, which is what they called it in the 19th century. For me, this letter epitomizes the gold rush, a young man leaving home to make his fortune, hoping to bring his sweetheart, wife, or family back to a young California to share in their good fortune and sometimes failure, but also the toughness and steadfastness that was evident in so many of the gold seekers and their families. This sentiment was probably in countless miners' letters home to their sweethearts. Time passes rapidly here. Very soon, a few months will have passed away, and very soon shall I be by your side. Sterling B.F. Clark, September 12, 1850, Natoma. The letter, preserved in our archives, is transcribed on the left, but let me read it to you. Natoma, September 12, 1850. Dear Rachel, the mail leaves the city on the 14th, and I have only time to write a few lines. My health is good as always. Time passes rapidly here, and very soon a few months will have passed away, and very soon shall I be by your side to enjoy that happy scene which bright anticipation now pictures to my mind. Write as soon as you receive this. As always, Sterling. P.S. Excuse brevity. Sterling, like so many others, had a photograph taken in Natoma for his sweetheart. He then sent it back to her in Pennsylvania. This locket is in our collection. Sterling was born in 1825 in Rutland, Vermont, the 8th child in his family. The family worked in the quarries, many dying from inhaling marble dust. Sterling decided to escape that fate and studied surveying, printing, and press work. He eventually ended up in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, editing a newspaper in a nearby city, as well as teaching school. At this point, he met Rachel Mitchell. When the news of the gold discovery on January 24, 1848, was officially announced from Congress in December of that same year, Sterling was determined to go west and asked Rachel to wait for him. This clipping is from the Californian, published in San Francisco on March 15, 1848. Gold mine found in the newly made raceway of the sawmill recently erected by Captain Sutter on the American Fork. Gold has been found in considerable quantities. One person brought $30 worth to New Helvetia, gathered there in a short time. California, no doubt, is rich in mineral wealth. Great chances here for scientific capitalists. Gold has been found in almost every part of the country. The Californian was forced to close its offices on May 29th of that same year, for the entire staff had left for the gold fields. Clark's diary, shown here, recounts most of his journey throughout the 3 months on the wagon train. The journey began from Pittsburgh on March 15, 1849, on board a steamboat, the Consignee, which reached St. Louis on the 23rd. On the 31st, he reached St. Joseph, Missouri, the starting point for many wagon trains. But Sterling was sick and confined to his room. He rallied, and on April 27th, he joined the Evans Wheeling Company wagon train, and from then on, the diary recounts nearly every day of the trip. The diary resides in the Society's collection. His diary describes the weather, the number of miles traveled each day, problems along the way, and other events, noting such things as no wood to cook, so they used buffalo chips, a tent letting in rain instead of keeping it out, and the observation of a box in a tree, which turned out to be the dead body of an Indian child. a method common among the Plains Indians. This image is from our Lawrence and Houseworth collection of photographs. Reaching Salt Lake City on July 17th, 1849, after nearly 3 months on the trail, they ascended the Sierras, and on August 20th, they went towards Sacramento City. By September 1st, Sterling had purchased mining tools and, in his words, has commenced gold washing. Sterling most likely had a copy of Jackson's map of the mining district of California, written in 1849 and published in 1850 in New York as a guidebook to the gold mines. The booklet was small enough to fit into a miner's pocket, thus the name Pocket Maps. You can see the map folded into the booklet to the left of the title page. The page reads, "In publishing a map of the mining district of California, it was thought advisable to give a short description of the towns and their locations, also a general account of the mines, their importance, the mode of working pursued, and other general matter, interesting to those who wish to seek out locations either for mining or trading." This detail of the map shows the mining district north and northeast of Sacramento. The entire map shows the coast, San Francisco and the Bay to the west, the Feather River to the north, and the Mariposa River to the south. Lithographed in New York on 69 Wall Street by Lambert and Lane, this map was one of the earliest maps of the gold mines. Sterling's Mormon Island is shown near the center of the map, about 25 miles northeast of Sacramento along the South Fork of the American River. Mormon Island, so called because the mining was begun there by Mormon immigrants, was also referred to as Natoma. This description of the location is from the same booklet. Natoma, or Mormon Island, has quite a considerable settlement of miners and traders, and it is situated on the South Fork of the American River, 25 miles from Sacramento City. Of the mining or washing district, it is the nearest to that city. Clark's diary underlines the single-mindedness of his efforts and of many miners at that time. This page reads from Mormon Island, "Friday 24, went to town, saw Harold, read of the attack, Polk's death. Saturday 25, in camp. Sunday 26, in camp. Monday 27, went to Sacramento, sold my mule for $50, bought mining tools, went out 5 miles. Wednesday 29, went to Island and prospected. Thursday 30, went 19 miles up the American Fork to the southwest. I undertook diggings and prospected. Friday 31, came back to Mormon Island. Saturday, September 1, commenced gold washing." Sterling's letter written in gold dust was created on September 12, 1850, over a year later. Rachel waited for Sterling, having received other letters than this, but this one must have been meant to impress her with his findings in the gold fields. Having been written at midnight, one understands the long days the miners must have worked to find gold and to just survive. This daguerreotype of Rachel and Sterling is also in our collection. Another letter, written nearly a year later on a letter sheet, which is illustrated printed stationery common during the early gold rush years, confirms that Rachel has agreed to come to California. It is dated Mormon Island, August 26th, A.D. 1851. "My dear Rachel, at 12 o'clock at night, on the only sheet of paper in my office, I hasten to answer yours of June 25th. And it continues later on. It is only a few days ago that I wrote a long letter to you. In it I asked you if you should oppose my returning to California. But by your letter before me, I see there was no necessity for asking that question, as you have answered it by saying, I would like to go to Cal to live." Sterling returned back east and married Rachel. We now have more information from Rachel's great-granddaughter that Sterling brought Rachel beautiful gifts for the bride, crepe shawls and gold bracelets. After their marriage, they boarded a ship bound for the Isthmus of Panama. Going across the isthmus was shorter than traveling around Cape Horn, but it also involved a difficult walk or trip on donkeys across the isthmus. After the trek, travelers took steamboats up the coast of Mexico and California to San Francisco. This image is one of a ship's card, advertising cards that were distributed at docks, mainly in New York and Boston, to advertise the voyage of a ship to California. During one of these trips back to California, either across the isthmus or up the coast, most likely the journey across the isthmus, Sterling caught the fever, most likely yellow fever, and had to be carried from the ship after arriving in San Francisco. He died 2 weeks later, and Rachel, 28 years of age, was left a widow. Rachel continued on to his mining camp and settled his estate, which included 2 lots of land in Sacramento, upon which later were built the state capitol and the governor's mansion. This image from our Lawrence and Houseworth collection shows a wharf in San Francisco a few years later. 7 months later, their child Ella was born. The descendant of Ella that contacted us a few years ago said that the miners took pity on Rachel and her new child and fashioned a cradle for the baby out of their sluice boxes, a long trough or box used to separate gold from gravel or sand. Rachel became the first school teacher of Mormon Island and remained there until she remarried, a Dudley Haskell. They then moved to Sacramento, where she had 6 more children with him. This tintype, also in our collection, was taken when Ella was 7 years of age. The diary of Sterling was passed on to Ella by her stepfather upon the death of her mother Rachel. Ella inscribed this information in the back of the diary. Wonderful diary of my father, Sterling Benjamin Franklin Clark of Rutland, Vermont, written in 1849 as he was crossing the plains, aged 25 years. Sent to me in London, 1900, upon the death of my mother, Rachel H. Mitchell Clark Haskell, by my other father, D.H. Haskell of Maine, from San Francisco, California. Baker Street, SF, from Ella Sterling McGill's, Ella Sterling Clark, 1923. The gold dust letter, along with the diary and daguerreotypes, were purchased in 1929 by Society member James D. Phelan. In 1928, Virginia Lee, a friend of Ella's, wrote to Mr. Phelan from New York City, bringing to his attention the items. The letter notes, Mrs. McGills wants $400 for this diary, which she confides in me she needs to repair her house, fix the roof, pay for the care of her father's grave, and various other things that are most necessary at this time. Mr. Phelan was taken with the items, for he purchased them and donated them to the Society of California Pioneers. He was also taken with Rachel and Sterling's story, for he had it privately printed in 1929. He included a brief biography of his ancestor, James Phelan, pictured in the previous slide, in which he noted the story of Sterling and his ancestor were similar to his father's, who barely survived the crossing of the isthmus. The book, How Many Miles from St. Joe? The Log of Sterling B.F. Clark, a 49er, also includes comments by Ella Sterling McGills as an afterwards. Mrs. McGills is pictured to the left in her 60s. Ella was born in Mormon Island, May 5, 1853, but later grew up in Aurora, Nevada. She was a writer and founded the California Literature Society in 1913, and then was named the first literary historian of California in 1919. She wrote, among other things, The Story of the Files, a review of Californian writers and literature, which is one of the standard sources for information about writers, novelists, journalists, essayists, and historians in 19th century California. What is remarkable about the gold dust letter is that we have so many other items that make the story come to life. And now, having been contacted by a descendant, the great-granddaughter of Rachel, who thought the letter written in gold dust was a myth in her family, we have even more information about the family and their story. The collection makes for one of the most complete gold rush stories we have in our archives and brings to life an era of California history that now, because of these items, seems more alive and immediate to us. I hope you enjoyed the story about a wonderful group of items depicting the history of the gold rush. Thank you for listening.